Hi everybody, welcome to this week's video. Hey, this week I'm sort of in process on a pretty big project I'm working on for my daughter. She put in her order for a couple of side tables for her bedroom a little bit more than a month ago, and I haven't been able to get to it. So I'm starting to get those pieces cut, and it's not enough to show on video. But I also talked about in my last video on my little rustic end table about how I'm kind of limited in my workspace. And I wanted to shoot a video to kind of feature that for folks that are just starting out, maybe give them a little encouragement. You don't need a ton of space in order to accomplish quite a bit in a workshop. You do need some space. So whether we're talking about the corner of a garage or a small corner of my basement, in fact, I'm in my mechanical room in my basement, and I'll show you some footage of what that means. But even with that small space, you can accomplish quite a bit. So that space sort of limits me on the kind of projects I can do. So I've had to turn friends and family down for large things like armoires or big dressers, and I have the tools to be able to do those things, but I don't have the space in the shop to lay out those pieces and put things together. So I tend to focus on smaller projects, small tables, coffee tables, other features, other art projects. And it turns out that my little space is just fine for those things. If you're going to make big furniture, then you're going to need some more space. But you don't need that to get started. That's my whole point. So I'd like to show you what I've done to my limited workspace and provide a couple of tips on how you might want to organize your spot so that you can get a lot of stuff in a small space. So stick around. So this is an example really about the biggest piece of furniture or project that I've made in my workshop. This is all cedar, done with 4x4, 2x6, and some slat lumber. And I was just able to get that into my 19x9 shop in pieces. Just doing the glue up in separate sections kind of filled up my shop. So starting at my entry door, this is my big L-shaped bench. I say big, but it's big to me. No single stretch of this bench is longer than 7 feet, which is a little bit of a challenge depending on the lumber you're trying to put on there. But the thing that I wanted to highlight here first is my first tip. When you don't have a lot of space, you want to build high and you want to build low. So I've got 3 shelves for my tools to sit on, and then underneath my bench, I try to take advantage of every square inch I've got in order to store additional tools. So on the far right hand side of my bench is my miter saw, and I even wind up using my dad's old drill press as that little crank up platform as my out table. This leads to another big tip. So for those tools, and I made this base myself, but if you can put it on wheels, it makes things easier to move around. Same thing with the table saw. Now normally these things block both of my double doors, but I'll pull them out when I need to use them, and you can see that it's really difficult for me to even cut a 4x8 sheet of plywood with my current setup. Other tools that I have that aren't on wheels kind of sit in the corner, and anything from my bandsaw to the back corner where you can't really see the garbage can, but I've got a little bit of a homemade dust collection system to catch the big chunks. And then my blower and my dust bag are up on the wall, again, just because I don't have the floor space. And I've got another one of those old tools from my dad, a little belt sander. Now to the right of that, we go back to my first tip of building high as opposed to wide. If you don't have a lot of space to put stuff on the floor, you've got to put it up. And so whenever I find some decent pieces of live edge material or other specialty woods that are on sale, you gotta love specialty wood on sale. I'll bring it home and stack it up. Now in between the water heater that you saw and my furnace to the right, I've got another little alcove, and this provides me, I've got another antique wood desk there that I store in power tool manuals and other material. And then for woods that I managed to get a hold of for turning projects, for lathe projects, I've got another storage area for those things. And then eventually to the right of the furnace, just a couple more shelf systems, my laundry tub, which is just my basement sink, And then to the right of the sink, the specialty glues, the epoxies, that kind of stuff. And another little antique table there that you can't see, but I saved the best for last, or near last. The heart of any real wood shop is your work table. Now, I love some of my YouTube partners or friends that have these monstrous workshops, and I would love to have something like a 10-foot by 16-foot work table in the middle of my shop, but I just don't have that room, at least not with this house. So I needed a small work table that I could use for multiple things. So whether it's to put my lathe on, my router table, or anything really, I needed the table to move around quickly, to be easy to move, and then be able to push out of the way when I needed more space on the floor. So this table does those things, which is great, but it's just not very big. So if you're talking about a very big project, it'd be tough to put it on my center work table. One of the other drawbacks to this is because it's lightweight, if I go to clamp up a piece of lumber like I'm showing here, and in this particular case I had a really high edge just on the end of this piece of reclaimed wood, you can see the thing move around as you try to get a good rip against it. And that's because the table just doesn't weigh a ton. So the benefit to it is that it's small, it's multi-purpose, it's easy to move around, but because it doesn't have a lot of weight, it's going to bounce a little bit and move around. So that was a trade-off that I had to make in this particular shop. Now, I talked about building high. Here's another tip. Now, I took an old piece of countertop and put it up on my ceiling between all the joists, but it turns out to be a great platform for storing long clamps on top of it. I've got a whole bunch of long clamps, and then of course the shorter clamps up on the rod, just hanging from the ceiling, and luckily none of this stuff is low enough to hit me in the head, so that's good. But that's how I took advantage of that space. So that's my tour of the 19 by 9 shop, and when you hear those dimensions, it sounds like it's pretty big and I could actually do a lot, but if you can just absorb from the video, it's pretty tough to do anything really big. And like I said, even 4x8 sheets of plywood were tough to manage. So still, you can get a lot done in this space. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.